So I am going to be rebuilding an R51/2 gearbox. Looks like this, which is much like an R51/3. Doesn't have a neutral switch, neutral light. So other than that, I do believe it's fairly much the same. A couple small things different. So have everything laid out here. I've done an initial check. I have all the old components up top, all the new components down below with some matching. Here I have a bearing that I made special that allows me to slide on to the end here, and also allows me to slide it into the case, so that way I can check the shim measurements. I can check how the gears align to the input shaft without pressing a brand new bearing into the case and onto here, and then having to see how everything meshes. This way I can do this, and I have the same thing for the input shaft. I have the rear of the input shaft also has a bearing like that. So I'm ready to go. First, I actually did check to make sure that these go on good and go in there and rotate good, which they do. So the bushings are fine. Okay, they go on the shaft. They go around the shaft pretty well. This bushing is very nice, and the same with this. So I checked all that, and that's perfect. Then I also checked the bushings inside the gears. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, check the bush. Same here, and you have to do all these checks. And same here. So basically, we're ready now to rebuild this shaft. Now that we have all our new components, I've done those checks. I'm a huge fan of Krytox. Okay? Before I discuss that, let's discuss the end shields / washers. So that is the exact same size as what I had, and this is slightly smaller. The parts book and everything calls for the same size front to rear. This, you see, has a hole to let oil in to that rear bearing. And if you overlap, it just lets a little bit in there. So I'm okay using this because this is what the parts book does call for. But it is slightly different than the original. So back to my Krytox. So I'm a fan of Krytox. If you don't know what Krytox is, look it up, read about it. It's a wonderful grease. And I use it on almost everything, especially when I install new bearings and the like. So I like to put a little bit in like that. Let me put the washer on, the spacer, in here, like such, and then I'll put this in. Okay, slides up, works good. I'll put a little bit more Krytox on here. Okay, make sure it's all over the place. I'm a fan because Krytox gets into the pores of the metal, and it really does do a good job. So there you go. And I'll put a little bit of Krytox on the outside here. Okay, like such. And now we're ready to put our gears up. Put a little more Krytox onto here. So that way the gears get it. Take our first gear, slide it up. Very nice. Second gear, slide it up. Very nice. Coming out really, really nice. Now, so for now, I'm going to put some Krytox in here. I have a little bit on my finger. So I'm just going to coat the inside of this. It's quite expensive, so I don't want to waste it. Coat the inside of that, and coat the inside of this. Okay, there you go. Now, here's our old keyways, and here's our new keyways. I always like to check. I did check earlier, and these do slide right in, and I also checked them on the other side. Okay, I can do that. Checked them in here to make sure they slide back and forth. Sometimes you have to do a little filing, but in this case you don't. It's actually pretty good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put these in. As you see, drive it down. Little taps because it doesn't take much. Doesn't take much. So I'm going to take the gears off just to make sure that's a little bit easier. So that's that. Makes this a smidge easier. Now I'm going to do the other side. Give it one more hit right there. And that's about even front to rear. Slide our gears back on. And we are good to go. Now, this, oh boy. Now this has to be pressed in. So I'm going to go to the press, and I'm going to press that in. I'll be back in a second. So we are back, and we have this done. It's nice, there's a little bit of movement there. It rolls really nicely, as you can tell. So everything is good there. Now what we have to do is we put this back, and I'm going to put a little bit of grease on here first before I do that. Okay, so just put a smidge of grease on, rub it all around. So now let's put this back on. Done. Very nice. There you go. Very nice. So now we have that done. So now I'm going to take the parts that I no longer need. I'm going to put them just over here, just so I don't forget them. Okay. Now this goes in. I already put some Krytox on the inside. So now this goes in like that. And look how nice that is. It's beautiful. Put a little bit of Krytox on the outside. Okay. Okay, put a little bit on here, slide that guy up, and boom, that's fine. Now remember, I have a test bearing, so I'm going to put the old one back. I'm going to put the old shield back. I'm going to slide my test bearing up. Okay, because honestly, that's going to allow me to put it in the case when I'm all done and just try everything out. Here, you'll also see that I've already lapped this onto the bell, onto the rear drive. So I've already lapped this. I used some lapping compound, and I've already made sure that that was a good fit. So I've already done that before I did any of this here. Now, let's go around. Oh, instead of doing that, let's actually start on this side, shall we? And let's put some grease. Now we put this up here like this. Look at that. Very nice. Okay, then we're going to dry that off because I don't want to grease on that. And put this up here. Now there's a little bit more sharp side, a little bit more round side. I always like to put the sharp side towards there. Somebody might disagree with me, who knows. Put this over there, put this over there. Put our bearing up, maybe a little bit more Krytox on this. Just so being a little bit chintzy with this because it is not cheap. Okay, maybe a little bit more in here. Okay, then here is where I will put the proper bearing. Okay, because I'm not going to take this side off. Okay, so that goes there, and then this bearing is going to go up here, and I'm going to press that on. Okay, so that makes this complete, except for this bearing, which is not pressed on. Actually, the new shield, and then the new bearing, because I'm going to use that as a test case. Okay, and in fact, if I want to do it right, I'm going to use the new shield, the new washer, with the test bearing, because now that spaces it out exactly how it will be, and this will be there. So I'll put this back in the box so it doesn't get any dirt in it, and we'll save that for after. All of this goes into other boxes. I save everything just in case I need something, but I don't like these. These bearings are not as good as the brass ones, So I probably won't save them. I'll probably just toss them out. So I'm going to press this on, and I'll be back to show you the final. Okay, so I am done with the output shaft. I pressed this on. Now I always like to check, and I did oil the heck out of it, so I'm all oily and greasy. I do like to check to make sure that it's pressed on good, because I don't put a lot of pressure on, so I cannot move that washer in there. Okay, so that's pressed against there, and that washer cannot move. So I always like to check that just to make sure I have a good seat on that. I did oil it, and you can see it spins nice, spins beautiful. This goes back and forth, that spins, I mean, everything is pretty nice. Here you'll also see how it's easy that these sliding claws, they're called, or the shifter mechanisms fall right in. Okay, and it's really very nice. So they go back and forth really super good and super easy. And I'm going to put a piece of tape over here to hold this bearing on while I build the input shaft. Okay, the input shaft is a little bit easier, but this is different than other input shafts for an R51/3 or an R68 or anything newer. This is an R51/2. So what you'll see here is the seal surface is here with the snap ring in here in the middle of the seal surface and the bearing. And here you'll see that. Here's the snap ring, and the seal surface goes there. Now on an R51/3, anything newer than an R51/2, they're swapped around. Whereas this is pressed on, and then the snap ring goes on the end. It's so much easier because you press this on, this holds everything together. You just go just past the snap ring and it goes right in. But this, you actually have to press this on and then get the snap ring in there while the spring's trying to push it back. So we'll see how easy that is with the press. So new bearing, new snap ring, new bearing surface, seal surface, new spacer, cleaned up the shaft here. I'm going to do a little bit more cleaning. I do not have another one of these, and this little spacer, which is really not supposed to be there, was here in the end, like that. And then the bearing went on like that. And I don't know if it's needed, and again, that's why I have my test sleeve, my test bearing, that slides on there. I'll be able to check everything out. I'll be able to make sure it's all spaced right. If it's not spaced right, I'll take it off, and I'll take that out of there. That allows me to test it in the in the gearbox without pressing everything together, pressing it apart, maybe hurting something. Here is the new bearing. These are very interesting bearings because it slides out like that. And there's the bearing. So there's a very interesting bearing. And I always like to replace them. A lot of people don't, but I always do. And so that's that. So that will go in the end. But for now, the other one is in the block already. In the gearbox already. And this one's already made, so it slides right on and right off. So I can do all my testing, do all my measuring with that. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit. Now, if you've never seen one of these, I'm going to take a little bit of Krytox here. Alright, want to put some nice grease on these. Okay, I'm actually also going to put some grease inside the female side. See, it rides on these too. So this rides like this. If you've never seen one of these, it rides like that. Okay, and it pushes the spring. Okay, and it kind of gives you a nice little smooth ride. Okay, and it smoothens out everything. So I'm going to put some grease on there because I like to have grease. Now let's put them together, shall we? So now, wow, slides so nice with Krytox on it. Now this goes in here like this. Now you see, it does slide in here a little bit. There's no bearing or anything. It just is steel to steel. So I'm going to put a little bit of Krytox in here just because. Okay, put a little bit in there just because. So there you go. So now we got a nice, wow, that slides beautiful. Okay, so now we got that ready. So now the next thing to do is to press our new, and as you can see, it has to go down a lot. Okay, in order to get this on, this has to go down a lot. So press that all together, and I'll use the press, put this in here. I have not made a bearing for this. There's no reason to on this side make a special bearing. On this side I did make the special bearing so I can put it in and out of the gearbox case and test it and try it and make sure that the spacing is all good. So yeah, there's no reason to do it on the other side. So, okay, I'm going to press this all together and I'll come back when I'm done. Now just another little hint here, there's a sharp side and a round side to this. Alright, and I always put the sharp side towards the side where it pushes. So if you feel it here, it's sharp, round. That's the way that they stamp it. Okay, sharp, round. So I always put the sharp side that way so it actually digs in. So let me get rolling with the press and I will be back in a second. And if you're rebuilding an R51/3 or 68 or 67, 67/2 or 67/3, the gearboxes are different. Well, the input shaft, I should say, is different. So if you see here, the snap spring is in between. Let me get something to point with here. The snap spring is in between what the seal rides on and the bearing. With an R51/3 or one of the other later models, the snap spring is out here. So it's a lot easier to put this together when the snap spring is out here. Okay? So in this case, if you're pressing one of these apart and you see that snap spring in here, don't keep pressing against this gear when you're pulling it apart, because you will do some damage and might even hurt yourself. So what you want to do is you have to get behind here with a bearing puller. You have to pull this off, which is not the easiest thing in the world. Then you got to remove the snap spring, and then you can press all that off. Okay? Just watch out for that, please. R51/2 and maybe some earlier R51/3s, not really sure, but just make sure that if you're doing one of these jobs, please. Okay? Also, you will say that this is the original off of this input shaft. Okay? And what you see is when it turns, it actually pumps the oil out. Sorry, pumps the oil in. It actually turns. It turns that way. Okay? Actually pumps the oil in to the gearbox. Alright? Because remember, these are felt seals, so they're not that great. Right? The original ones are felt. Well, I have a lip seal for this that I ordered special, believe it or not, on eBay. And I'll put the actual part numbers up there. But yeah, got it on eBay. Special felt, lip seal for this that'll ride here. Perfect. Another thing with this, here, this is the spacer that sits right there. Again, I'm sorry. This was all apart, and I made the original video, and the focus didn't work right. So again, I'm showing you this built. I apologize. Here is the shim here, and you'll see here, there's a lot of wear on that. There's a lot, boy, there's a lot of wear. You do not want to reuse that. You got to check these, and don't be cheap. Don't reuse shims that look like this. It's not going to work. Okay, that's actually going in the garbage. So there's a new shim in there, new bearing obviously, new seal surface for it to ride on, new snap ring. I like putting everything new in. Again, what I've done on this side is this is a very interesting bearing. Okay, this bearing goes into the back of the gearbox, and this is a very interesting bearing. It's able to take two sets of loads, and it's a nice bearing, but you have to order the right one. I also have machined this down so I can slide this in to the case. I can slide this on here. I can measure everything up, make sure that it is meshing appropriately. Where is it here? Oh, sorry, there you go. Meshing appropriately with these gears, making sure that everything is fine, making sure that everything is spaced right. And then once that happens, then I'm able to put the real one on here, put the real one in the case, and then remeasure obviously for the shims because things might change a little bit. Boy, now, I was not able to get one of those. Please make sure you don't ruin that. And it's actually not bad. The other interesting part on this one, and this is one of the other reasons I'm testing, is a very thin shim there. Very thin shim. And this was here. So that's not on any of the parts manuals. I don't know why. So I'm going to leave it there for now, but that's certainly something that I'll be testing and measuring and seeing why that's there and figuring out if I need that or not. Okay? Okay, let's talk about the kickstart mechanism. So this is the kickstart shaft. Okay? Obviously the Kickstarter goes here and you kickstart, right? The way this works, this is a couple components, but basically this sits here like this, and you kick and it grabs and it ratchets. It ratchets against this in here. You can see that's pretty worn down right there. You see that? That's pretty worn down. Now I could have welded that up and I could have ground it and made my own, but I ordered one. So I got one of these coming, and I will certainly have a video when I'm rebuilding that. But in here there's a spring in here that keeps it pushed out, so it ratchets against here. This rides in here like such and goes around, and this is what actually does the kick starting, okay, and rides against there. This rides against it like that and kick starts the whole system. So I will have a video on that, but the thing that I wanted to show here is that this had a pretty good notch taken out of it. So when you kick, okay, you're kicking like this, all right, it actually snaps back. So if you look at it, you can hardly see it. I did a pretty good job of welding. So when you kick this and it snaps back, it goes against the stop. Okay, and obviously there's a spring, right? And whack, it goes back. Well, it dents this piece right here. It dents this. Okay, so what I did was I welded that up. I ground it back, made a little pocket, welded that up, and then ground this down so that way I have a new fresh surface. Okay, you got to look at that too. All right, because sometimes if you see that the Kickstarter is up too far, it might be that there's a divot there. There's a pretty good divot on mine. So I fixed that, but when you weld something like that, you just don't want to weld a little piece on. Okay, because that might come off. You want to actually make a little pocket. You want to actually make sure that you're welding up and you actually have something to grab on. And then once you're done, you want to file it down. And then what I did was I used some gun bluing and I blackened that up so it's nice and it's not going to rust, and it shouldn't rust anyway because it's in oil. But the point is, it looks good and it's proper and everything's good. Everything else was all good, just that this was rounded off. So I bought a new one. And what happens is I already started the pin. So before we put everything together, I'm going to grease everything up. Okay, take some of this, put some of this on the spring itself, slide the spring down there so it goes back and forth. Take this, the plunger, looks really good, put some grease on that. Of course now it's slippery, put that in there like that. Now take this, I want to grease the sides so it goes up and down right. Okay, now I'm going to take this over to the press and press this mamma jamma in. It doesn't take much, it's just a little bit, but I got to set the press up for it. I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I pressed this in. You can see how it's nice. Okay, let's test fit it here, shall we? Slide it in, like that. Yeah, that's the way it should be. Just like that. Now we have to stake the end here. And so I'm going to stake this side first, and then I'll stake that side second. You got to stake both sides. So I'm going to get everything ready to do the staking, and I'll show you how I do it. So, I like to use this for staking. So what I've done is a piece of metal, put it on a piece of wood so it kind of stands up high so I can get a nice flat surface. Take a nice sharp center punch, and the first stake I'm going to do is off to the side. Okay, because you actually want two over here. So I'm going to hit it. There we go. So that's one. You can see it right there. Then we go 180, as good as possible, 180 degrees apart. It's like that. And that is going nowhere. Okay, I actually had to use the press bed because I couldn't get something that was high enough here. So I used the press bed. So let me just show you how it looks. So what you'll see here is that can actually focus. You got 2 dots here, okay, and it is staked in there, and it is not going anywhere. And then I got 2 dots here, and it's staked, and it is going nowhere. Now we're going to put this in the starter here. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease, just so like in there. It'll spread out in the end, don't have to be too. Put some here, like that. So now we got it all greased up. Put this in here, put it down like this. There you go. So that is very nice. You can hear that. You can hear how nice that sounds. It's nice and greased up. It feels good. There's no movement there. So everything feels great. Next thing is to put the collar on that holds it. So here's the collar that holds it. And that just slides, as you'll see. I marked it because I wasn't sure if the pin was tapered or not. So I put a white mark there, put a white mark there. So this slides down like that. So if it is tapered, I didn't want to hurt the taper or ruin the taper. So then I put a white mark on this because the pin is still fine. It came out actually quite good. And this we just tap right in like this. And she should go right in. Just like that. You see it coming out the other side. There we go. And that's it. And that's where the spring will actually go on. So the coil spring will actually grab that. Coil spring comes in like this and grabs that. Just like that. So I might knock that in a little bit more. Yeah, I think I want that a little bit. It's actually not bad. I'm going to knock that in a smidge more. Because I want that coil spring grabbing that good. Look at that. Now we're talking. See? So the coil spring comes in there and grabs that. And that's what actually puts the, when you kick it, that actually brings it back that way. Okay? So coil spring looks good. You see there's some nice clearance there. That's in there tight. That's going nowhere. That's all perfect. So that's ready to go in. So I have put the shafts in with the temporary bearings that I made. The shim, the extra shim, actually works out very well. The shafts are perfect height-wise to each other. So that's perfect. I'm leaving that shim in. So everything looks good. First thing I'm going to do is start measuring. So I have my standards here. I chose the small ones. Okay. You put your gasket down. Put your standards down. I'm going to do this a different way because I can zero this. So I'm going to turn this on, put it down there, let it sit, and then I'm going to zero it right there. So now I have 0 against the spot with the gasket, or with the gasket on it. So if I say that, I'm going to say, let's re-zero that. 0, fine. So I have 0 to the gasket. Okay, then I'm going to go from the gasket to here. 325, that's actually perfect. It's actually perfect at 326. So 326, 326. So I'm calling this 326. Now, you take the other side, and you take your standards, and I'm going to try to do this so you can see it with the, I'm going to do it this way because it'll be easier. So I'm going to take this, put this over here, put my standards back down. I should go right here, and it should be 0, if this is proper, and it is 0. Okay, there we go. Now I go back down over here, and I see 370. Go over here, 370, Go over here. 370.5. So this measures in half a thousandths, so it's an extra half a thousandths. So we're talking about 370. So if we go 370 minus 325, that is 45. Okay, so that's 45. We take 10 off of that for the clearance. So if there's 45, that means this is 45 thousandths deeper than the bearing with the test bearing in here. Remember, this is the test bearing. So I'm going to put the real bearing in, and it's most likely going to be different. But just for measurement's sake, right now we're talking 45 difference, which means that that we have to add take 10 off of that, 35. So we have to add a 35,000 shim in here if we were using these test bearings. So I'm going to take everything out, get everything ready to be put back in, and then I'm going to put the real bearings in there, and then we'll remeasure again with the real bearings. And it probably is going to be different. Okay, so I heated up the case. I put the new bearing in. Where is it? SKF NJ204 ECP. So I put the new bearing in, and it just dropped right in once I heated it. And I had to tap it a little bit. And I just always put a little bit of weight on the outside of it, even though it went in pretty good. Always put a little bit of weight on it, so that way I keep it down. Okay, and I keep it seated as it cools down because I don't want it to come up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the other end on here. Okay, the other end of the new bearing, as you can see, is a little bit different. Okay, so I'm going to press the other end on here of the new bearing, and then get rolling with that. And I'll press that, and then you'll see how it's all done. Then I'm going to press the other bearing on here. And, you know, this one's ground down, so it slips in. So I'll have the shafts all ready. Okay, so I'm going to start putting things together. First thing you got to do is put the Kickstarter spring in, return spring in, or I guess over travel spring, I should say. So we got to put that in. So I like to grease the heck out of this thing because it slides. This lives a bad life. Okay, so we're going to install the spring. I greased the spring completely up. You want to put some really good grease on that because that does not live a nice life down here. Put a little bit more right here down the bottom here in the crotch. So that way it's got some nice grease. Put that in there. And honestly, because I don't want this to leak, I'm going to put some, first I'm going to wash my hands here. Make sure my hands are not greasy. Okay, clean my fingers off. Okay, use a little bit of degreaser on my fingers. Let's do a little bit more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some Hylamar onto this. Okay, so that way it doesn't leak, hopefully. Because I hate when my gearboxes leak, when my motorcycles leak, and my wife does not like it. My wife yells at me all the time when my motorcycles leak. Not a fan. So I don't like to put too much Hylamar on because I don't want it to get into the gearbox. So I just wipe off the bottom there so it looks nice and that will not get into the gearbox. I'll take my freshly rebuilt Kickstarter and I'm going to put that in there because that hits that. Put that in there like that. Bring it up over here. So there we go. That's about ready. And now I got to put this other end in, and this is so R51/2. It has this piece with the seal in it. The seal's there, and this piece, which I had CAD plated. So those are the three pieces for the R51/2. This slides in here like this. And you have to heat the case up to tap this in, but you also have to put the bolts in, so that way it lines all up.
There's more than enough space for one life,
so I found the four screws that I had CAD plated. I got the piece that goes in there. I got the gasket. I got the seal. I got everything ready that I need. I got this. So I always like putting some silicone onto the end here. So I will put some silicone onto the gasket here. Some gray. I always use ultra gray for that. Just wipe it off. You can't even see it. Put some ultra gray on here. Get everything up. Heat this up so I can tap this in. Get everything in there. Make sure that I can get this proper in there. And that's it. So I got the starter in. Everything was good. Moves good. Everything's fine. Seal's there. Got a little bit of silicone on there. So that way it'll be good. Got the starter spring here. So pretty much, yeah. Everything's done and ready. Put a little bit of grease in that bearing. I always like to put a little bit of grease in that bearing because it doesn't get the oil right away. So grease that bearing up pretty good. So I'm going to heat up the case. This is in. So this is fine. So that gear is fine. We got everything ready. I'm going to heat up the case so I can slide this bearing in. And what you have to do is you have to put these two together. If I can actually get it right. You can put these two together, and you got to, you have to strap them together with a tie strap. So that's what I'm going to do. Strap them together with tie straps. Get it in there. Get this hot enough, and it'll go right down. So I have a bag of shims here. All different sizes, 4,000s, 2,000s. I should probably have it in order. 2,000s, 4,000s, 5,000s, 7.5, 10.5. 18.5, then I have some other types. But here's my bag of shims. So I'm going to add it up to 27 thousandths, or as close as possible. Come here, we check both ways. Check with the calipers. 26.5, that's actually pretty good. 26. Alright, and then I also like to check with my micrometer. So I'll check with the micrometer as well. 25, 26.5, 27. So that's a 26.5, 27. Yep, so that's pretty well perfect with what I'm looking for. So that will go in there, and I'll show you how to do that. This, I gotta say, for reordering. I'm gonna put some silicone on this. I always use silicone, but before I do that, I'm gonna wipe this down with some degreaser. Okay, wipe that down with some degreaser so that way the silicone works. Silicone will actually seal it. Just put a little bit of silicone on the actual gasket. I don't want to increase the clearance that much. So just put a little bit on there like that. So I wipe that clean. Take this side. By the way, I did put the seal in. So remember, it's an R52. And if people tell you you can't get a seal for an R52, you're wrong. So clean the mating surface here. Like that. I'm going to put some silicone on the gasket itself. Get that down there. I'll put some grease on here. Okay, so I have a little bit of silicone on the gasket. I'm going to take a little bit of grease and I'm going to grease the surface where the seal will ride. I'm going to take some grease and I'm going to grease inside here as well, where the seal is. Okay, so do that. Okay, right there. Then when I'm also, so I made sure that the seal is nicely greased. Okay, like that. Okay, then I'm going to take the two shims. Okay, there we go. I'm going to put some grease on the shims so they hold into each other. and I can put them in there and not worried about losing them. Okay, so fine. The grease, you don't want to put too much in there, but you want to put enough so it holds in. Okay, so now that should be fine. And if I put the grease away, if I turn this upside down, the shims should not fall out. Great, so I've got the shims held in there. Next, let's pre-oil these bearings a little bit. Okay, just make sure I got some good oil in them. It's always good to have that. Pre-oil these guys. There we go. Fine. Okay, so now I'm going to put this over like this. The nice part is that I didn't lose those shims, did I? Nope, they're still in there. Nice part here is that this has already some, I can use longer bolts here and go and get down. Just start one. Okay, just a little bit higher over here, so we're going to have to knock that down. So just start one, maybe start two. Okay, so we got lined up. This has 2 pins here and here. Then we're going to heat this up, and I always like using a heat gun instead of a torch, because to me it's more controllable. And I can control a heat gun better than I can control a torch in here. So I'll just use the heat gun, and once this is hot enough, we'll knock this down. Hear that? Done. Put the heat gun away. Okay, and then I'll just take these down. Okay, temporarily screw these down. These are just temporary because I want to make sure everything's fine. I want to make sure everything's sealed up here. I've got everything looking good. Well, that feels really good. That feels really, really, really good. Yeah. Feels really good. Okay. That. So now I'm going to put the shorter ones in. And I'm going to use new washers. And next thing we're going to do is just hand tighten these. Okay. And there you go. This is all done. And we can just turn it, and that feels really good. Feels like it has a little bit of drag on it. This is cool. So I can put my hand on it. It's cool. Feels like it has a little drag on it. And that's good. So I think we're okay with that. So now we're going to put the spring in. So I hooked the spring on the inside. I like to use some silicone on there. Makes it a little bit more difficult when you're using silicone, but the nice part is it seals better. And then I put the Hylamar on the bolt, on the screws themselves. So let's see if we can do this without ruining that gasket with the silicone. Okay, so got that lined up. Start turning it. That's half a turn. Let's gasket is still there and still good. Let's do a second turn. Gasket is there and still good, but it's a little bit high. I don't like that. So I'm going to push it down. Turn it like that. Okay, looks like we're still okay. Maybe the gasket got a little turned. So I'm just going to go like that. Going to put this screw in there. Start putting this screw over here. Already got some Hylamar on it. I'm probably going to take it off. Put more Hylamar on. So that's that. And you just screw them down. First you got to remove this tool. Okay. And you just screw them down. And that's it. It's really that simple. Okay. And I can tell that with the silicone that it's spread out very nice, which is beautiful. That is great. And then I always like to test it right away before anything gets hard. The silicone gets hard or anything gets hard. Like I said, I'm going to take these out and I'll probably put a little bit more Hylamar on it. But what I'll do right now is first I'll make sure that the gears turn, which they do. Okay. Bring that out. Okay, so everything turns. That's great. Then I'm going to actually test the actual ratcheting here. So I don't do this very often, just a little adjustable, little baby adjustable right in there. And just test it. And there you go. But she's working okay. So that's that. And that's it. And so that is all good. Like I said, I'll probably put some fresh Hylamar, some better Hylamar in there. But she's ready to go. Next, we're going to build the shifter mechanism. So we have a fresh seal in there. It's an R51.2. Most of the R51.2 packages come with the felt seal, but they can be upgraded to a dual lip seal. So I did that. Got the shifter mechanism together here. Okay, as you can see, there's a small spring, there's a spacer, and a large spring. So a small on the bottom, spacer, large spring. Then what you do is you put them all together and then you tie it up with some safety wire. Make sure the safety wire is on this side so it slides down over there. So we're going to do that right now. Have everything nice and greased up. I like to grease everything beforehand. So that way it goes in there really nice. Just kind of move it around so the grease kind of goes in all over the place. Then you got to shake this a little bit, get it in there. And this will go in like that. And it will slide down sooner or later. There we go. I do believe that's down there. Yes, it is. That is fully down. So just make sure that's fully down. And then what you do is once you're comfortable with that, I'm going to wipe off the excess grease here to make it look nice. Okay, so it's in there. That's happy where it's at. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that wire and I'm going to put this in. So use my snips. Cut this wire. Pull the wire out. And that's fine. Then this will go in. And I'm actually going to put a little grease over here before I finish it all up. But this goes in here like this. And just kind of wiggle it around. So the nice part is I can actually distribute all the grease. Put some grease into the teeth here, as you can see. Okay, put some grease in the teeth. Distribute it around a little bit. Perfect. That is really very nice. So now we have to put the pin in here, and I will do that off camera because that just is making sure that we have the pin in there. And that's it. And that's getting the shifter ready. Typically what I'll do is I'll just use a small adjustable, put it in here, and just make sure those springs work. This way, this way, this way. So it looks good. Feels good. Looks good. Feels good. So now wipe the extra grease off, distribute it where you might want it, and that's it for that once I put this pin in. Next, we will get the shifter fork in. So here's the shifter rod. I've seen pictures where the newer style rods have a big groove around here, which is much easier to find the grub screw. And this one just has one. Also, you'll note that when I slide this in, when I first slid this in, I went, wow, that slides in there really easy. I don't like that. But then I realized, okay, there's a small, this is raised on this end. So it's going to get tight the minute it gets up to there. Like that. So that way it gets tight right there. So when we get this up there, I will be putting some Hylamar here and some Hylamar here, and then heating up both sides so I can just tap it in there. I don't like to tap these types of things in cold. So I like to heat them up a little bit, let this aluminum grow, and then just tap it in, and then I can get this nice and lined up. So that's what I'm going to be doing. First though, I am going to put some of my handy dandy Krytox on, because I am a fan of Krytox. Okay, a huge fan of Krytox. Now I've already put some Krytox up. Here's the rear one. I've already put Krytox in here. Okay, in there where the shift fork goes, here on the sides. Okay, get it nice and in there. I put it in here a little bit. So then put the shift fork down to where it goes. Slide this in. That's the first one. Then the second one I'm going to take again. I already put the Krytox all in here. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more right there. So that way, remember this is very expensive stuff, but that way we'll be able to just make sure that there's enough right there. Okay, and that it'll coat that sliding dog there. So put this over here. So I slipped that in, so that now slides in and out nicely. Okay, and as you can see, it slides back and forth real nice, doesn't it? And so does this one. Alright, they both slide back and forth super nice. Okay, and so that's good. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to clean off the end here, reach down there with this, clean off the end there, and put some Hylamar in down there so we can seal it, and then I'll put some Hylamar in the hole as well, because I do not want this leaking. Okay, and these are prone to leak. Because we certainly want to seal it over here. Okay, like that. Then I'm going to heat up the heat up the gearbox, and I'm going to just tap that in. So I'm going to heat up the gearbox now off camera, and I'll tap that in. So I heated the block, I tapped the rod in. My hole is actually perfectly lined up for the grub screw, which is never the case. I just lucked out on this one. And as you'll see, that and that are both perfectly, if you go like that, there we go. Over here, perfect. And the same thing over here. Okay, so that's fine. So actually go like that. Move this one this way. Beautiful. There we go, and we're shifting. So it is definitely working very well. And these slide so nice on the shaft. Yeah, look at that. First gear, second gear, then we have third gear, and then we have, if I can get it in, fourth gear. Look at that. Beautiful. Beautiful. So that's all working fine. Slide back and forth a couple times. Make sure she's okay. I like getting the Krytox that I put in there all spread in. So that's all nice. So we are actually all ready to go with that. Next will come the installation of the shifting mechanism. And before I do that, I am going to put some Krytox on the end, and actually I'm going to put a little bit on my finger so I can spread it out here on the little shifting nub on there. Then I'm going to take a little bit and I'll actually put it into the slots here. Slide your shifter mechanism down. Okay, and here's where you want to try to get it in there like that. There we go. And now you can see how it works. Okay. I always put a new spring on when possible. The old spring out, new spring in. I always try to put that on. I just think it's better. New components, especially springs, they get weak over time. I put some Krytox on the shaft and a little bit of Krytox on the spring, just so it slides up and down nice. And the washer, a lot of times I change the washer. In this case I didn't have to. So that's that. So old spring goes in the garbage, or in the garbage pail I should say. And next we're going to set up the actual shifting mechanism. And I will show you how to set up the shifting mechanism. Next thing we do is put a new cam pawl on with the spring. I always like to use a new pawl and a new spring because quite honestly it's got a nice sharper edge than the older one. The older one might be worn. This one actually looks pretty good, but you can see where it has gotten somewhere. So this one's new. I always like putting a new one on whenever possible. Again, Krytox. And I'm going to put the Krytox right here because that's where this pivots. I'm going to put it on the edge right there, and I'm going to smear it right there a little bit. Okay, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit over here where it rubs, and on there. And then I'm going to put the spring in, hook the spring in if I can actually find it. There we go. Hook the spring in, and then put the pawl on. And it's really not that hard once you get it going. My hand's a little bit slippery because of the Krytox, and it just slides right there, just like that. And then once we have, we're going to do a little bit of shifting here. Once we have this lined up, it'll be fine, and you'll see how it works. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the shifter plate on. So there's a special plate they make for this. It's right here, and it goes just like that. Actually, just go like that. Yep, it goes just like that, and it sets everything up. And to make sure that you can adjust everything, so it has some spacers that we're going to use, and you use the, shall we? Okay, get that down there, get that in place, just like so. Then drop the second one in. I'm going to push it over a little bit. Try not to drop it in the gearbox. I've done that a bunch of times. Okay, right there. I know it's difficult to not drop it in the gearbox, but it always works better if you don't. Right there. And the third one goes down here. And then we're going to be able to actually do some shifting. Okay, what you'll see is that holds that in there, and then you can actually do some shifting with it. Now we're going to check to make sure that the gear positions are all right, and pretty much what you're looking at are the gear position nubs there. So I just put this on by hand, the drive flange. I just put it on by hand so I can spin it, and I just mounted the arm here, the shift arm, by hand. Okay, so here we're in neutral, so we're going to turn the drive flange and we're going to shift it to first gear. Okay, now here what we're looking for is we're looking for the space here and the space here. And to make sure that it's even, and it's about a 1/2 millimeter. And it looks good, and it's even. And one of the other tests I do is I just pull this, And I see, well, does it bottom at the same time? They bottom at the same time, which says to me they're about even. So just bring it back to neutral in here. I mean, not to neutral, but bring it back to even in here, and we can see that they're about even. So that's the check on first gear. So when we're in first gear, that's how you say, okay, the position is fine. So let's go back to neutral. So now let's check second gear, shall we? Second and third. So we spin this, and we come up to second gear. Here what we're looking for is that this pin is central to that bump. See the bump right here on this side? Well, here for second gear, it's central right there. So we want to make sure that it's central to that bump. And it's pretty darn close. In fact, it's almost perfect if we look at that. That's pretty good. Now we're going to do the same thing for third. Go to third. Oops, sorry, go all the way to third. So now we're in third. We see we're here in third. And we look, are we central to that? Yes, we are. We're looking pretty good so far with all our tests. Okay. And then the final test is to go to fourth. And again to see if we're about even top to bottom, which we are. We're about even. It's all the way up. It's in there nice. You can see there's a little bit of play there. But basically, that's pretty good. That's very nice. They're all the way up. You can push them. You can just feel they're about the same. But they're right up there and there. Now with this plate still on, and with it in this configuration, I'm going to put the seal in for the drive. Okay. Now this is an R51/2, and it normally comes with a felt seal. I went out and purchased a lip seal because I like it better. So I'll put that in there. Then I will put the, let me put this on top. Then I will put the drive flange up here. Okay, I will put that in. I will then use a new nut. I always use a new nut, and I always use a new wave washer. I never reuse the nut or the wave washer. I know a lot of people do. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in reusing that. So I always use a new washer, and I always use a new nut. And to me, that just is, you know, it just ensures everything is fine. Why? I have already lapped this. So when everything was off, I used lapping compound, and I lapped this to the output shaft. And so I know it's lapped, I know it's good, and I know it's nice and tight. So I've already done that work, and now all I have to do is put it in. So I apologize, but my battery ran out as I was taping. I didn't know it. So I put the side cover on this side. I put the side cover on that side. I have strapped it down. As you see, I have a special platform here that I can strap them down to. And I now use my drill, and I go through the gears, make sure everything's okay. I just put the gear shift on here temporarily, make sure everything's okay. And so I'm going to show you how I do that. But pretty much this gearbox is done and ready to go. But I just like to go through the gears, put some oil in it, go through the gears, and then flush the oil out. So any contaminants or anything I might have left in, I flush it all out. I'll usually do that 2 or 3 times. Fresh oil, run it, flush oil, fresh oil, run it, and do that 2 or 3 times just to flush everything out. So I know you're not going to see much, but this is how I test the gearboxes. I use my drill. I have a special fitting here I made up, and I go through all the gears. Nice and smooth. Neutral, smooth. There's neutral. Do it again. First, second, third, fourth. Nice. Third, second, first, neutral. And that's fine. Run a little bit. Let's do it again. My battery's going. First, second, third, fourth. Yep. Third, second, first, neutral. And change my battery and do it some more. Then I will change the oil, flush that out. Then I will do it again and I'll flush it again, and I'll do that 2 or 3 times. This gearbox is done.